Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first drive video on BMW's X5 45e. Over the past 12 months or so, I've been asked a lot about this particular car. Is it any good? Does it make more sense than, say, their brilliant X5 30D, which is definitely my favourite X5 in their current lineup? Also, here in the UK from 2030, we're potentially only going to be able to buy EVs and hybrids. So this sort of car has got a lot of attention around it at the moment. People are really keen to know what it's all about. Also, when you factor in company car tax, benefit in kind, hybrids and EVs make a lot of sense for that sort of customer. The base 45e starts at just over £65,000 here in the UK. This M Sport trim version costs about £70,000 on the road. This particular press car has about an extra £5,000 worth of spec on it, so not too crazy. It has things like the technology pack, the M Sport Pro pack, I think it's called, which probably consists of these bigger 21-inch wheels and a few other bits and pieces. It also has the crafted Clarity gear stick knob. That's about £550 on its own. Completely pointless option. But if you want your X5 to look like a Mercedes, then I guess that's for you. We've essentially got a detuned B58 engine. So it's a 3-litre inline-6 turbocharged petrol engine producing just under 290 horsepower. It also has some electric motors that produce just under 115 horsepower. So when you combine those two, you're looking at a car or an SUV that has roughly 400 horsepower and 600 newton meters of torque. That gives this a claimed 0 to 62 figure of just 5.6 seconds and a top speed just shy of 150 miles an hour. I think that's definitely quick enough for your large SUV. BMW also claim that this will do 217 miles to the gallon. Well, we'll talk about that a bit more once we get in the car, but I can tell you that it has a 24 kilowatt battery that, again, they claim that will do about 50 miles on a single charge. And it has a 69-litre fuel tank, so slightly reduced from the 80-litre fuel tank that you get in a regular X5. And I think that's not too bad. They've had to reduce the fuel tank, I'm guessing, to save a bit of space for batteries and hybrid technology, but 69 litres is still a nice sized fuel tank, even for a big 2.5-ton SUV. Right, let's jump inside. It's cold out here and I'm beginning to lose the feeling in my fingers. Before we go any further, I just want to say a massive shout out to The Last Coat, who are sponsoring this video. The Last Coat are a very established American detailing products company. As most of you know, I'm not the best at detailing and maintaining my car. I tend to do it 3 to 4 times a year if it's lucky. But I'm sure you agree, it looks a lot better now than it did a bit earlier on. I actually cleaned it using the Last soap. But the product I'm most excited about is the TLC2. This keeps surfaces cleaner and drier for longer. It's hydrophobic. It also protects it from things like salt and ultraviolet rays from the sunshine. Not that we're getting too much sunshine over here in the UK at the moment. As you've just seen seconds before the heavens opened, the difference between the left-hand side of the bonnet where the TLC2 had been applied and the right-hand side of the bonnet, which had nothing on it but had been clean like the rest of the car, the little quattro could not grip at all on the left. Didn't matter which angle or where I put it, it would just naturally slip off the bonnet. Whereas on the right, that hadn't been treated, well, it would grip because there's still a lot of contamination and rubbish effectively on the paint. And what that equates to over the next couple of days or couple of weeks or even couple of months is when I'm using this car in all sorts of weather, the rain, the water, the salt, the grime from other cars is not going to stick to the paintwork. It should just wash straight off, especially after another random downfall of rain. So if you want to get yourself some of this amazing The Last Coat products, please use the discount code Achilles20 and get yourself 20% off. There'll be a link to their website in the description below and also in the pinned comment. I'm going to go around the car, dry it off and then apply this to the entire paintwork, and hopefully that'll mean that I don't need to clean this car for a while longer. What I I was most intrigued about with this X5 hybrid is, would it feel much different behind the wheel compared to one of its combustion engine only siblings like the X5 30D, because this does weigh an extra 250 kilos, so I wasn't sure whether that would ruin the brilliant ride or the handling. So we're coming into a nice little section here. I'm in individual, we'll talk about those modes in a minute. Let's whack it into sports, over into sports automatic gearbox. I've even got paddles because fundamentally they're controlling the ZF 8-speed, and I'm now using the combustion engine and the electric power should I need it. And coming into here, let's remember, a regular X5, a combustion engine X5, is about 2.2, 2.3 tons. This is 2.5 tons. You can feel that there is a lot of weight there, but it manages its weight really well. Just like so many of these big modern SUVs, they somehow disguise their weight and their mass, and they control it all very well. I wouldn't say it feels sporty. I mean, now I'm in sports, I can feel that the suspension's a lot stiffer. It's not uncomfortable, but it's a lot stiffer than if I knock it back into hybrid. Everything softens off. And obviously down here there's lots of different calibrations, so you can have your individual settings. So when you're in sports, you can have the softer dampers, etc., just like you can in the majority of BMWs. So I think if you jumped in an X5 30D now, or you just jumped out of one and into this, you wouldn't notice the difference. But in isolation, this car doesn't feel it's 2.5 tons in weight. Something else I was concerned about was whether I'd notice the hybrid drivetrain. Would I be aware of the combustion engine cutting in and cutting out? Because that's what effectively it does. When I'm in hybrid, it's being switched on and off all the time. And again, the short answer to that is no, it does it so seamlessly. In fact, half the time I have to put on the energy flow diagram down here so that I know when the combustion engine is on or off, because it's just so seamless. It's on now, and it's off, and it's on, and it's off. So there really is no way of at least hearing. You can maybe feel it engaged just slightly, but it's pretty much seamless, and I think that is incredible. It's very similar to what I've talked about recently with BMW's very latest mild hybrid system that controls the stop-start functionality. It really doesn't surprise me too much that BMW have got this so right in their, let's call it, second generation of hybrids. They're very, very good with software. Their ZF gearboxes always tend to be better than anyone else that uses them on the market. So yeah, I'm really, really impressed with the way this drives and handles, considering it's a hybrid, and that shouldn't be a compromise, but in reality it is. .400 horsepower and 600 newton meters of combined torque does sound impressive, but when you factor in the 2,510 kilos that this weighs, and that's before you throw me and my camera gear in it, you're not going to expect performance figures, acceleration figures to be too mind-blowing. But BMW do quote that this will do 0 to 62 miles an hour in 5.6 seconds. A couple of days ago, when it was a bit drier outside, I actually tested those figures with my Racebox GPS. So let's jump back to that and see what I managed to achieve. Launch control in BMW's X5 45e. It has a claimed 0 to 62 figure of just 5.6 seconds. Let's see if this 2.5 ton hybrid can get close to that. I'm in sports gearbox, so this is going to give me all of the combustion engine and all of the electric power. Launch control active, here we go. Well, that's really powerful off the line, and there we go. 4.97 seconds and it's in the green. I'm sure you agree, just under 5 seconds on GPS for a large SUV that weighs 2.5 tons is massively impressive, and would definitely give the majority of sports cars a run for their money, at least off the line or in a straight line. Really, really impressive. I wasn't expecting it to be, well, much under what the manufacturer BMW claimed, but 5 seconds is just unbelievable. Performance figures these days, especially in the straight line, are just getting quite ridiculous. And I know this has got all-wheel drive traction, but still, you can't argue with the sub 5 seconds to 62 miles an hour in something so big. Let's talk about what this car's like in electric only. So down here, there's an electric button. I press that, that would disengage and shut down the combustion engine. Now we're running on the 24 kilowatt batteries and electric motors. In this mode, it will happily keep up with normal traffic, especially in town. Anything below 40 miles an hour, it really deals with it very, very well. BMW quote or claim that it will do 51 miles to a full charge. Now, I've found that to be more like about 42 miles, so 20% down on what they claim. But that's 42 realistic miles, you know, in town, on A or B roads, bit of motorway. And I think 40 odd miles is long enough for the majority of your daily journeys. It's very rare that you're going to be dailying something like this more than 40 or 50 miles a day. Where hybrids get very confusing is their claimed miles to the gallon figure. An X5 30D has a claimed 40 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle. This has a claimed 217 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle. 217! I mean, when you read that, it just sounds ridiculous, and it kind of is, and it's not strictly true. When they test these cars on the WLTP cycle, they must be much shorter journeys, because if you had a full charge in this car and you did a 40-mile journey like I just talked about, then obviously the miles to the gallon are going to be through the roof, because I'm massively unlikely to use the combustion engine. So if you pushed out to a 50-mile journey, then I'm going to use the combustion engine for bits and pieces of that journey, but still the combined MPG is going to be astronomical. Where that figure really starts to look a little bit off is on longer journeys. For instance, the other day I was on the motorway for about 150 miles, and when I started my journey I had about 8 miles of electric range. So that soon disappeared, and I was left with a detuned B58 engine. Now that engine that produces just under 290 horsepower, pushing this 2.5 tons of hybrid X5 around, is almost a little bit underpowered. And it didn't struggle, but all of a sudden I'm doing 25-26 miles to the gallon on that 150-mile journey. How is 25 or 26 miles to the gallon anywhere near 217? I don't know, but that's what you've got to understand, that unless you're doing a sub 50-mile journey and you've got a full electric range, you're not going to get anywhere close to their claimed figures. An X5 30D would probably do 650 to 700 miles on a full tank of diesel, whereas this, if you drove it in the same manner, I reckon you'd be lucky to get 500 miles out of a full charge and a full tank of unleaded. Like so many hybrids out there, this X5 can't utilize the fast charging network. In fact, its battery will only charge at a maximum of 7 kilowatt hours, which is kind of equivalent to you having a fast charger at home. And that means that the battery, 24 kilowatt battery, will charge from 0 to full in about 5 hours. If you've only got your regular mains at home or at work, that same charge will take roughly 9 hours. That doesn't sound ideal or great, especially when you compare it to, let's say, any Tesla out there, but because you've got the combustion engine and you've got a 69 litre fuel tank, you're not always depending on that electric battery. And also, the majority of journeys that are done, let's say in the day when you get the car home, if you can plug it in overnight, well, it's always going to be full in the morning. So it's not the end of the world, but it would be nice if you could charge it up at a fast charger, at a fuel station for instance, or on your journey. This car does its best to keep power in the battery, and in fact there's a really handy button down here that looks like a battery. When you press that, you've got battery control, and then you can set your target value. So I can tell the car to try and keep, let's say, 60% of battery power in the cells, so that when I get to the end of my journey, let's say it's London, and I want to drive around London for 15-20 miles, I'll be able to do that on fully electric. So it's always going to try and keep the electric power there. The negative side of that is, to do that, obviously the car is constantly having to fire up the engine, combustion engine, to feed power into the batteries. It's kind of a false economy, but it is a way of making sure you've always got electric energy available. In terms of value, well, 70 grand isn't cheap, and this one sits at about 75 with a few toys, and that doesn't include my beloved panoramic glass sunroof. But when you compare it to other large luxury SUVs that are on the market, it actually sits really well. Let's look at Range Rover's P400 hybrid, I think that's what it's called. They start at £91,000. That's a massive chunk of money, and I know there'll be people out there that will still put a Range Rover over an X5, but in my opinion, this is more reliable, better built, better tech. It's every bit as good as a Range Rover, if not better, and at £20,000 less, well, it's kind of a no-brainer. And watching Harry's garage, he's actually tried both of them, and he much prefers the X5 45e. He thinks it's, yeah, a much better, more rounded package. And without driving the Range Rover, I can't really comment, but I can't imagine it's any better executed than this 45e. I'm going to end with the few negatives that I have found with this car, because, well, it's only fair. The first one being, if you want a 7-seat option X5, you can't get it in this 45e, so you'd have to get a combustion engine car. 2 rows of seats only. The next one is boot space. A regular X5 has 650 litres, which is fairly massive. This car only has 500 litres, so you lose a fair amount of boot space due to all of the batteries and the hybrid tech that's stuffed back there. And my third and final negative is the charging, or lack of charging capabilities, as we talked about. The fact that you can only charge it at 7 kilowatt hours. It will get most people out of trouble, but it would be nice if that was 2 or 3 or 4 times bigger, and I'm sure the next generation of hybrids will allow you to do that. But otherwise, yeah, really impressed with this car. I'm going to miss it. It's been fantastic in the week that I've had it. The ride quality and stuff, compared to, let's say, that X6M competition that I had a couple of weeks ago, well, it's chalk and cheese. This is an absolute joy to live with. That just wanted to rattle my fillings out all the time. So really good job, BMW. I've enjoyed this car, and I think it does represent very good value. Guys, thanks so much for watching, and thank you for the support that I've had so far in 2021. Really appreciate it. If you want to see more content on this X5 45e, please head over to Yes Auto using the link in the description below. I've filmed a unique video on this car talking about 5 reasons that I think it is the best hybrid on sale today. I'll see you at the next video.